The wooden wheels of the covered wagon creaked to a halt outside the general store in Cedar Ridge, a small frontier town nestled in the valley below the Montana mountains. 24-year-old Elizabeth Harper stepped down from the wagon seat, her simple cream-colored dress dusty from the long journey west, her brown hair braided practically rather than fashionably. Elizabeth had traveled from Boston with a wagon train of families seeking new opportunities, but unlike the others, she had no husband, no family waiting for her, and no clear plan beyond, escaping the suffocating expectations of Eastern society that had branded her a spinster at 24 simply because she valued books more than embroidery and asked too many questions. For a woman of her station, standing on the wooden porch of Harrison's general store was 32-year-old rancher Samuel Harrison, a weathered man whose brown leather coat and wide-brimmed hat spoke of years spent working the land. Behind him, peeking around the doorframe, were two young girls, 10-year-old Ruth with her serious blue eyes, and 7-year-old Mary with golden curls that reminded everyone of her late mother. Samuel had been watching the wagon train arrive with more than casual interest. Word had spread through town that there was an unmarried woman among the travelers, and as a widower struggling to manage his ranch while caring for two young daughters, he found himself considering possibilities that would have seemed unthinkable just a year ago. "Miss," Samuel called out as Elizabeth gathered her few belongings from the wagon. "Might I have a word?" Elizabeth turned to face this stranger, immediately noting the respectful distance he maintained and the two children who watched her with curious, hopeful eyes. "I'm Samuel Harrison," he said, removing his hat politely. "These are my daughters, Ruth and Mary. I understand you're traveling alone?" "Elizabeth Harper?" she replied cautiously. "Yes, I'm traveling alone, though I'm not sure what business that is of yours, Mr. Harrison." Samuel appreciated her directness. Most Eastern women would have been flustered or offended by such a forward question, but Elizabeth met his gaze steadily. "I'll speak plainly, Miss Harper. My wife died 18 months ago, and I'm struggling to manage my ranch while properly caring for my girls. They need a woman's guidance, and I need a partner who can help run a household and teach them the things a father can't." Elizabeth felt a flutter of both interest and wariness. "And you're telling me this because I believe you might need shelter and stability, and I need someone reliable and intelligent to help raise my daughters. It would be a practical arrangement, beneficial to both of us." Ruth stepped forward with the seriousness that came from taking on too much responsibility too young. "Papa's been trying to braid my hair, but he's not very good at it. And Mary misses having someone read to her at bedtime." Elizabeth looked at these two motherless children and felt something stir in her chest. She had always loved children and had expected to have her own someday before her unmarried status had made that dream seem impossible. "Mr. Harrison, are you proposing marriage to a complete stranger?" she asked with characteristic bluntness. "I'm proposing a partnership," Samuel replied honestly. "Marriage for practical reasons, with the understanding that we would both work to build something good for the children. I won't lie to you about romance or pretend this is anything other than what it is. Two people helping each other survive and hopefully thrive." Elizabeth considered his words carefully. The alternative was to continue west with no clear destination and dwindling resources, hoping to find work as a governess or teacher in a society that offered few options for unmarried women. "What would you expect from such an arrangement?" she asked. "Help managing the household, teaching the girls reading and mathematics, partnership in making decisions about the ranch and family. In return, you'd have a home, security, and the legal protection of marriage. And personal autonomy? Would I be expected to simply obey without question?" Samuel smiled slightly at her directness. "Miss Harper, any man who expected you to be silent and obedient clearly hasn't been paying attention. I need a partner, not a servant, someone who can think for herself and help solve problems." Over the next several days, while the wagon train resupplied in Cedar Ridge, Elizabeth spent time with Samuel and his daughters. She helped Ruth with her letters, taught Mary to braid friendship bracelets, and observed how Samuel interacted with his children with patience and genuine affection, despite his obvious exhaustion. "Why did you come west?" Ruth asked one evening as Elizabeth helped her prepare for bed. I wanted to find a place where I could be useful, Elizabeth replied honestly. Back east, people thought I read too many books and asked too many questions for a woman. Papa says questions are how we learn things, Mary chimed in from her small bed. He says smart people always want to know more about the world. Elizabeth found herself moved by the practical wisdom of this frontier family. Samuel treated his daughters as intelligent beings worthy of respect, and the girls had learned to value learning and curiosity rather than just appearance and compliance. On her last night with the wagon train, Elizabeth made her decision. Mr. Harrison, she said as they sat on the porch steps while the girls played nearby, I accept your proposal, but I have conditions of my own. I'm listening. I want to continue the girls' education beyond basic reading and arithmetic. I want them to understand that they can think for themselves and make their own choices about their futures. Agreed. And I want to be a genuine partner in decisions about the ranch. I may not know about cattle and horses yet, but I can learn, and I have experience managing household finances and planning. Samuel nodded. I hoped you'd want to be involved. Running a ranch takes more than just physical work. One more thing, Elizabeth continued. If this arrangement is to work, we need to be honest with each other. About expectations, problems, feelings. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not. I wouldn't want you to, Samuel replied seriously. I need someone genuine, not someone playing a role. They were married 2 days later in a simple ceremony at the small church, with Ruth and Mary serving as witnesses and the few townspeople present offering practical gifts, preserves, fabric, and tools for their new life together. The first months of marriage were an adjustment for everyone. Elizabeth learned to manage a frontier household, from preserving food to treating minor injuries, while Samuel discovered that having an intelligent partner meant his evening conversations extended far beyond discussions of weather and livestock. You know, Elizabeth said one evening as they reviewed the ranch's accounts together, if we planted a kitchen garden behind the house and expanded the chicken coop, we could become more self-sufficient and maybe even sell surplus eggs and vegetables in town. Samuel looked up from the ledger with genuine interest. You've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about a lot of things. This ranch has good land and water access. With some planning, it could support much more than just cattle. Over the following year, Elizabeth's practical intelligence and Samuel's experience created a partnership that exceeded both their expectations. The ranch became more profitable, the girls thrived under Elizabeth's patient teaching, and the family developed the kind of comfortable rhythm that comes from people who respect and support each other. Elizabeth, Ruth said one evening as they worked on lessons together, are you glad you married Papa? Elizabeth considered the question thoughtfully. When she had first accepted Samuel's proposal, it had been a practical decision made out of necessity. But somewhere along the way, their partnership of convenience had grown into something deeper. Yes, Ruth, I'm very glad, she replied honestly. Your father is a good man, and you and Mary have become the daughters I never thought I'd have. Do you love Papa? Mary asked with the directness inherited from both her father and her new stepmother. Elizabeth felt her cheeks warm, but she answered honestly. I do love him, Mary. It happened gradually as I got to know what a good father and partner he is. Love doesn't always happen the way it does in storybooks. That evening, as Elizabeth and Samuel sat on the porch after putting the girls to bed, she found the courage to voice what she had been feeling for months. Samuel, our arrangement has become more than either of us initially planned. He looked at her in the lamplight, noting the way her practical wisdom had revealed itself as a kind of beauty that had nothing to do with fashion or social expectations. I've been thinking the same thing, he admitted. When I proposed this marriage, I thought I just needed help with the ranch and the girls. I didn't expect to find a true partner, someone who could challenge my thinking and make me want to be better. And I didn't expect to find someone who valued my mind as much as my ability to manage a household, Elizabeth replied. Samuel reached for her hand, a gesture that had become natural over their months together. Elizabeth, what started as necessity has become choice. I love you, not just for what you do for our family, but for who you are. I love you too, she said simply. We built something real from something practical. 2 years later, as Elizabeth watched Samuel teach 4-year-old Thomas to ride while Ruth and Mary helped with the expanded garden that had become one of the most productive in the county, she reflected on how much their lives had changed since that first practical conversation outside the general store. Their marriage had proven that love could grow from respect, partnership, and shared commitment to building something meaningful together. They had created a family based not on romantic idealization, but on genuine appreciation for each other's strengths and the willingness to work together toward common goals. Mama Elizabeth, Mary called from the garden, using the name that had evolved naturally over time. Come see how big the tomatoes are getting. Elizabeth smiled, understanding that the most lasting love stories weren't always the ones that began with passion, but the ones that were built day by day through shared work, mutual respect, and the choice to keep choosing each other even when the initial reasons had evolved into something much deeper and more sustaining. Sometimes the most practical decisions lead to the most profound transformations, and sometimes the arrangements we make out of necessity become the foundations for the lives we never dared to dream possible. If this story reminded you that love can grow from respect and partnership just as beautifully as from passion, please give it a like and share it with someone who believes that the strongest relationships are built on mutual support and genuine appreciation. Subscribe for more stories about finding family in unexpected ways, and let us know in the comments about how practical decisions in your own life led to meaningful relationships. Sometimes the most lasting love stories begin not with romance, but with two people choosing to build something good together.